Rodney greets the morning in his customary way. He's the boss, the leader of a group of chimpanzees that live in a sanctuary on the edge of the New Forest in Dorset. Rodney's little community contains the most famous chimp in Britain, a young female called Trudy. Friday was Trudy's 3rd birthday, and she spent it in the heart of her newly adoptive family. But life hasn't always been so good for Trudy. A year ago, Trudy was alone, kept in a barn at this farm in Hampshire. It was here that she was found by the charity Animal Defenders. They secretly filmed the famous animal trainer Mary Chipperfield beating Trudy with a riding crop.
What I saw was actually a terrified chimpanzee. Trudy was on the ground screaming in fear, not knowing what was going to happen next, and perhaps more significantly, she was looking for reassurance from the person who was actually beating her, just like a human child would. She was holding her hands out, looking for any sort of comfort and support to make sense out of what was happening to her. And there was no comfort, there was no support.
Mary Chipperfield was found guilty on 12 counts of cruelty to Trudy, and on Friday she left court with a £7,500 fine. But this is Trudy's story. It tells of how a sad and confused chimpanzee became whole again. Intimate diary footage follows Trudy's tender steps on her path to recovery. Trudy is now in the care of Monkey World, run by 2 dedicated primate experts, Jim and Alison Cronin.
Morning, guys. Morning, Ed.
Hello. We see every chimpanzee, every ape here as an individual, and they all matter, and they all have their own needs, and they have a right to a quality of life because of who they are.
In 12 years, Jim and Alison have rescued over 50 chimps, all victims of human abuse.
Hey, you.
What's that?
Good boy.
With time and patience, each individual is rehabilitated into a family group. This is what makes Monkey World unique. So they were the obvious people to turn to on April the 22nd last year, when the courts ordered the confiscation of a young chimp.
Wait till we got everybody. Wouldn't mind following us up there.
The first thing we heard is we got a call from the Hampshire police asking us to go with them, rescue a baby chimpanzee, and put her into protective custody.
November Alpha 1 X.
While Mary Chipperfield was held at the police station, Trudy was waiting with Mary's husband, Roger Cawley.
Not only in our interest, but in the interest of the chimp. All the warrant says.
In the presence of the police and the Chipperfields' lawyer, Jim and Alison's vet, John Lewis, examined Trudy.
The most noticeable thing about Trudy, when I first met her anyway, was she was silent. Very quiet in the presence of strangers. Now, that's most unusual for a chimpanzee. She had a few physical injuries. The tips of 2 fingers were missing. The tip of 1 toe was missing, and she had a small lump on the back of her head.
She was dazed and confused. She was limp, like a rag doll, really. If, when you interact with people, the interaction you have is generally receiving beatings, it makes sense if you hold still like a statue and don't draw attention to yourself, you might not be the target of the beatings. Her self-image was, I think, a very confused one, and she probably identified more with people than she did with chimps.
Now safe at Monkey World, Trudy didn't utter a sound all night. But she seemed a little brighter on the first morning in her new home.
Tight. Holding tighter this morning.
Is she?
Yeah. Strong little girl now. One of the first things, actually, when Trudy was with us that we noticed was that she's profoundly cross-eyed. Roger and Mary hadn't even noticed this, and for a so-called member of your family not to notice that they're cross-eyed like she is. It just said it all. Trudy didn't really respond to anything. She didn't seem particularly interested in her surroundings or in us. Finally, I got a response out of her by tickling her, and it was a silent laugh, I guess you'd call it, but it was the first response.
Down here, it's okay. I think she does have to. I think she's squeezing to get a poop out.
But yeah, she wants to do it on something.
Trudy actually chose to get down off of people's laps to relieve herself. And this isn't uncommon. We've seen it before. Animals who are used for human entertainment are often trained to get off of a person when they need to relieve themselves, because obviously it wouldn't be very pleasant or correct if they were to relieve themselves while they're associated with a person.
Trudy was just beginning her long journey to rediscover what being a chimp was all about, so that one day she could be part of one of the family groups at the sanctuary. Chimpanzees are naturally boisterous, friendly, and intensely sociable. Trudy was not. She didn't know how to communicate with her fellow apes. Chimps express themselves using a wide range of sounds and facial expressions, like the play face, when the lips cover the teeth and the mouth remains open. It's often accompanied by the soft pant of chimp laughter. This is not laughter, it's the fear grin. Here the lips are pulled back, revealing the teeth. Alison would have been happy with any response from Trudy, but she remained dazed. There are two main characters at Monkey World who are always called on to help when a damaged chimp like Trudy is first brought in. One is Jeremy Keeling, who's been working here ever since the sanctuary opened in 1987.
A snack for breakfast.
Morning, Sal. Hey, guys. How you doing?
Jeremy, how's it going, all right?
The other character is Sally, a chimpanzee and Monkey World's resident foster mother. Together, Jeremy and Sally have helped rehabilitate 13 disturbed baby chimps.
Well, I can work along with Sally because I've got that relationship with her. Here, Sally, you want the broom for a minute? I want it back, though. Good girl. Mind the baby.
Jeremy and Sally give the youngsters in the nursery stability, which is vital when they first arrive.
Don't break the handle. You know how strong you are. I suppose really I'm quite boring because I am very much a creature of routine, and they like a routine. It just makes life a lot easier, and it makes them more comfortable. If the same thing happens day by day, then it makes them comfortable because they, you know, if they know that, I don't know, 8 o'clock in the morning, they're going to get their breakfast and it's going to happen this way, and then as long as it does. I mean, being like that is only good unless you never actually alter it. Once you start altering it, then you will get very insecure people. But, oi, go away. Look, I'm supposed to be dominating you. They thought I was in control. Stop it. Stop it. It's not nice.
Sally likes to adopt baby chimps, and she doesn't seem to actually get on very well in large social groups, so mothering babies really seems to be her calling in life, and she looks after them very well, and perhaps more importantly for her, it means that she's automatically in charge.
Sally is a role model. She teaches the newcomers what it means to be part of chimpanzee society.
We're walking a really funny tightrope between humans and chimpanzees.
Wait a minute. Get out of it.
The hope was that Sally would work her magic with Trudy and begin easing her out of the human world and into the chimpanzees. Expectations were high.
Excuse me.
When Sally first met Trudy, Trudy was scared to death, I think. She kept looking at Sally like, you know, what are you doing taking me in with this huge monkey? She was scared, but Sally was good as gold. It's just quite remarkable. She held her hands out in reassurance. She'd look away as to not be intimidating. She tried to groom Trudy.
He's trying to take her, Sally.
Good girl, Sal.
Good girl, Sally.
For one moment, it looked like Sally's patience might pay off. But saving Trudy wasn't going to be that easy.
Oh, she's tickling you, Trudy.
Sally was desperate to try and get Trudy's attention and perhaps even affection, anything from Trudy at all. And Sally's a young lady. We had to sort of try and assure Sally that what she was doing was right and to give Trudy a bit of time.
Nothing Sally tried worked. Trudy continued to reject her and always rushed back into the arms of a human for security. The team were disheartened, but far from defeated.
Perhaps Trudy didn't like Sally, and, you know, that's their prerogative. And it's the same as like my relationship with them. You know, I don't like all the chimps, but there again, I've got 49. The chances are being, you know, with 49 different people, I think overall is a very small percentage I don't actually get on with when you would do a comparison back to humans. But, you know, you do get that. Some individuals just don't like each other, and that's, you know, that's the way it goes, isn't it?
Chimpanzees are very similar, especially to human children. They experience the same emotions, which happiness, fear, grief, upset. And the play patterns are also very similar. You can see that chimpanzees have the same sort of games as human children. They enjoy playing tag and basically hide and go seek and running around and having rough and tumble play together. The similarities go beyond that, and you can see it in the family groupings. For when an infant will get hurt or challenged or upset by another one, the first thing they'll do is scream and turn to look for their mother or their father for reassurance. And the chimpanzees do just the same thing.
Trudy was taken away from her mother at a very early age, so perhaps it wasn't surprising that she was scared of adult chimps. Maybe she would fare better with chimps nearer her own age.
She's gonna scream at him soon. Now let it go. Let it go.
We tried Trudy with Sally and a few of the youngsters in the nursery to see if that would work, but at the first sign of upset or aggravation, Trudy just makes a beeline for the first person she can get hold of.
Uh-oh. She's starting to get excited now. Sally's starting to get frustrated.
Hey, Sal.
Sally tries to cuddle and play with Trudy over and over again, and clearly Trudy won't have anything of it. So Sally gets frustrated and starts getting too pushy, and Jeremy has to tell her no. Back off, give her some space.
Let go.
But once again, no problem.
Alison tried to make Trudy jealous by playing with the other chimps. The hope was that if Trudy saw what a good time they were having, she would join in. But again, it didn't work. The youngsters also try to get a reaction from Trudy with a series of friendly chimp pats. But Trudy doesn't understand that they just want to play and have fun. In the end, all but one of the chimps found Trudy very boring to be with.
Gypsy did very well with her, but Gypsy's perhaps one of our less intelligent chimps, so he seemed happy playing with Trudy, even though she didn't respond very much at all.
Trudy needed more time, the time that had already been given to the other chimps at the sanctuary. Some, though, will never lose the mental scars of their previous lives. Like Pepper, a chimp saved from a nightclub in Spain, where she was forced to smoke cigarettes and drink beer to amuse the revelers of the Costa del Sol. She still tries to light little pieces of twig.
Hello, sweetheart.
Jim and Alison have a special place in their hearts for one old chimp called Mona.
Oh, it's a big girl. Yes, it's a big girl. I found Mona in Gran Canaria in 1991. You know, she's a wonderful example of a chimp that, you know, you couldn't do a lot more. She was partially crippled by the person that was keeping her in Spain, using her as a beach chimpanzee. She was blinded in one eye, only partially sighted in another. She's lost most of her teeth. And we've got her in with another group of chimpanzees, and she's a sweetheart with people. The people she trusts, and that's just amazing.
Chimpanzees express the full range of emotions, just like human beings. So they experience joy, sadness, sorrow, and also happiness and laughter. And what you hear from Mona is laughter. That's a chimp having a good time and laughing. Yes.
2 months after her rescue, Trudy was now being left on her own in the nursery group. Despite having access to a large outside enclosure, she never went out. Jim and Alison decided that Trudy would have to experience the world beyond the nursery.
Trudy was clearly scared to death of being outside at first. And it's quite a shocking thing when you see a wild animal scared to be outside, scared of the open area, of the wind, of the grass, of everything around her. We often saw Trudy actually hugging bundles of hay. Animals that are removed from their mothers too soon rely on hugging hay because normally they would be hugging their mother, and in the absence of a mother, they'll have a security blanket, and Trudy's security blanket was her little bundle of hay. It was difficult, but it was something that she needed to learn and something that we wanted to happen when we were there.
Not only did Jim and Alison try to help Trudy, but her friends from the nursery did too. But they just couldn't understand why she was so upset. After this ordeal, it was a very long time before Trudy actually chose to go outside. Over the summer, Trudy began to make slow progress, but she wasn't the only baby in the park. It's a full-time job for 10 keepers to look after all 120 primates on site. They get through a mountain of food, including 1,500 boxes of bananas a year. Although Monkey World are dedicated to rescuing apes, the sight of a newborn baby is very rare. They don't want any more chimps to be reared in captivity, so all females are fitted with a contraceptive implant, which is placed just under the skin. But that wasn't enough to quell Cherry's maternal instincts.
Come on, sweetheart. Come on, sweetie. Who's that guy?
So what we think happened actually is that Cherry or somebody else actually removed her implant, her birth control implant, and after a few months we began to notice that Cherry might be looking pregnant. So Jeremy called it right, and lo and behold, we've had a baby. It's a little boy, and we've named him Seamus.
To prevent any more little Seamuses, Jim has called in Trudy's vet, John Lewis, to fit IUDs, better known as coils. John Edwards, a gynecologist, oversees the procedure.
Like that.
It's much the same as it would be in a human, except of course that the chimp is under a general anaesthetic. Four months after her arrival, Trudy was put in with a family group, which included the younger chimps she had been with in the nursery. There was also the boss, old Rodney, and the adult females, Mona and Peggy. Trudy was still not right. She spent most of the time on her own, indoors, clutching her bundle of straw. She didn't play with anyone, and she tended to sleep alone.
We were concerned about Trudy's development. It was slower than we would have expected for a young chimp. But I had faith in Trudy, I suppose you'd say, that she'd come round and come good, especially with the other chimps that we had. And it was just a matter of time before Trudy grew to accept them and realize that they would do her no harm, and quite the opposite. They would put her on a pedestal and treat her like a princess.
Alison would have to wait until the autumn before she saw the first real signs of progress.
One of the key moments for me that I knew that she was on the path to recovery was when I saw her start to make friends with her adopted brothers and sister. And one day I saw her actually being led out of the house by one of her elder brothers. And she looked happy and confident and actually perhaps glad to be in his company. And I knew we were on the way.
Trudy had finally begun to make those alliances that are vital in chimpanzee society. Even old Rodney had been won over.
Trudy was kept in solitary confinement. She was alone, she was cold, and she was miserable. And in Britain today, that's legal. Now, everybody loves Trudy, everybody cares about her, but if it's gonna matter at all what happened to her, the law must change.
When animal defenders found Trudy, it was part of an 18-month undercover study. They're also campaigning to change the law and give protection to hundreds of animals kept in circuses and performing animal centres. The campaign is backed by over 200 MPs. Trudy had refused to let Sally adopt her, but another adult female called Peggy was about to play a large part in her life. 10 months after her rescue, Trudy's rehabilitation was almost complete.
One of the biggest moments is when we actually saw her adopted by Peggy. And actually riding on Peggy's back, Peggy took her on, and for whatever reason, Trudy chose Peggy as her adopted mother. And she started looking to Peggy for the reassurance that she needed rather than to us. She's getting back into chimpanzee society now. She finds her place with them, not with us. And in terms of the group, she plays them just like any small child would, and any baby chimpanzee in a society is the cherished individual, and Trudy is just that in this group. They dote on her, they look after her, her brothers and sisters vie to play with her. Peggy is intensely protective of her. Trudy's found a home, she's got a family now, and she knows it.
A chimpanzee can live for 50 years. When a photographer has them or a circus, after 6 years, they're of no use to them at all, and they kill them. What we can give Trudy, if all goes well for her, is another 40 years with her family group.
On Friday, Trudy had good reason to celebrate her 3rd birthday. Mary Chipperfield finally gave up all rights to her, and now she can stay in safety with Peggy and the rest of her family in Monkey World.